The wedding hall was filled with light and flowers. Everything looked perfect. The tables were covered in white cloth. Candles burned softly on every surface. Guests sat in rows, wearing their finest clothes. Some were laughing, some were wiping happy tears. Outside, the sun was going down slowly. Inside, the music played low and sweet. This was the biggest wedding the city had seen in years. The man getting married was no ordinary man. His name was Harlan Reed. He was one of the richest men in the entire country. Everyone wanted to be here today. Everyone wanted to see this. Harlan Reed stood at the front of the hall. He was tall and broad-shouldered. His suit was dark and fitted. His shoes were polished so clean they caught the light. He did not smile much, but today he was trying. His hands were clasped in front of him. His jaw was tight. His eyes kept moving to the door. He had waited a long time for this day. He had told himself this was right. He had told himself this woman was the one. Her name was Vivienne Hart. She was beautiful, and everyone knew it. Vivienne Hart walked down the aisle slowly. Her dress was white with beads along the edges. Her hair was pinned up high. Her neck was long and elegant. The guests stood as she passed. Some reached out to touch the edge of her dress. She smiled left and right. She was gracious and composed. She had practiced this walk many times. She knew how to move. She knew how to make people feel like they were watching something sacred. But her eyes, when she reached Harlan, were just a little too practiced, just a little too controlled, almost like a performance. The guests settled back into their seats. The officiant began to speak. Harlan looked at Vivienne, and she looked back at him. Everything seemed fine. Everything seemed like a perfect wedding. But then something happened. A waitress walked in from the side door. She was not supposed to be in the ceremony room during this part. The guests turned to look at her. She was young. She wore the plain uniform of the catering staff. Her name was Lila Voss. She was carrying a small white envelope in both hands. She walked directly toward Harlan. The room went completely quiet. People looked at each other with confusion. The officiant stopped speaking. Vivienne watched with her lips pressed together. Lila reached Harlan and stopped. She held the envelope up to him and said nothing. Her hands were shaking just slightly. Harlan frowned. He looked at her face. He looked at the envelope. Something in his chest moved. He did not know why. He reached out slowly and took the envelope from her. Lila stepped back. She did not run. She just stepped back one step and waited. The whole room watched Harlan hold the envelope. Harlan looked down at the envelope in his hands. It was sealed with clear tape. His name was written on it in small, neat letters, not typed, handwritten. He turned it over. There was nothing else on the back. He looked up at Lila again. She was still standing there, still not running, still not speaking. Her eyes were steady now. He looked at Vivienne. Vivienne's face had changed, just barely, but Harlan had spent years reading people. He had built a business empire by watching faces, and what he saw on Vivienne's face in that moment was not confusion. It was fear. Harlan opened the envelope right there. He did not step away. He did not go to a back room. He pulled out a folded paper and opened it slowly. The guests were so quiet you could hear the paper unfold. Harlan read the first line. Then he stopped. His whole body became very still. He read it again. Then he looked up at Vivienne. His eyes were no longer trying to be warm. They were flat and focused. Vivienne swallowed. He looked back down at the paper. He read it one more time all the way through. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. Harlan looked at the officiant and said quietly but clearly that he needed a moment. The officiant nodded without speaking. Harlan turned to Vivienne. He said her name once, just Vivienne. She looked at him. He asked her if there was anything she wanted to tell him right now before they continued. Vivienne blinked, and she touched her necklace. She smiled and said, "Of course not." She said everything was fine. She said this was just some silly interruption. She said they should continue. Harlan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and said, "Okay." And then he said they could not continue. The guests erupted. People gasped. Someone knocked over a glass, and it shattered on the marble floor. Vivienne's smile disappeared. Her mother stood up from the front row. One of Harlan's old business partners leaned over to another man and whispered something. Harlan did not look at any of them. He kept his eyes on Vivienne. He said the paper he had just read was a DNA test, and it showed something that changed everything. Vivienne said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then she laughed. She said that was ridiculous. She said someone was playing games. Harlan did not laugh with her. Harlan said the DNA test in his pocket showed that a child existed. A child who was biologically connected to him. A child he had never been told about. His voice was low and careful. He was not shouting. He was not crying. He was using the voice he used in boardrooms when something had gone very wrong and he needed to stay sharp. Vivienne said that was impossible. She said she did not know what he was talking about. She said whoever gave him that paper was lying. Harlan turned his head slowly and looked at Ilara, who was still standing near the wall. He asked Ilara to stay. Vivienne's mother walked forward now. She was a large woman in a green dress. She pointed at Ilara and said that girl had no business being in this room. She said security needed to remove her immediately. Her 2 men in black suits began to move toward Ilara. Harlan raised one hand, just one hand, and both men stopped. That was the kind of man Harlan was. One gesture, and people stopped. He said no one was to touch Ilara. He said Ilara was going to talk right here, right now, in front of everyone. Vivienne grabbed Harlan's arm and said, "Please, not here, not like this." Harlan looked down at Vivienne's hand on his arm. He did not remove it. He just looked at it. Then he looked at her face. He said, if she had nothing to hide, then she had nothing to fear from hearing what Ilara had to say. Vivienne pulled her hand back. She smoothed her dress. She lifted her chin. She said, "Fine." She said, "Let the girl talk. Let everyone hear whatever nonsense this was." She turned to look at the guests with a small, tight smile. The guests were frozen. No one moved and no one left. The flowers on the tables trembled from the air conditioning. The candles flickered. Harlan walked toward Ilara. He stopped a few feet from her. He asked her gently who she was. Ilara took a breath. She said her name. She said she had been working as a waitress for 3 years. She said she had a daughter, a little girl who was 4 years old. She said the girl's name was Lila. Her voice cracked on the name, but she held herself together. She said she had been afraid to come forward. She said she had tried many times to reach Harlan through other ways, but was always blocked. She said today was her last chance and she had to take it. Vivienne spoke loudly from across the room. She said this girl was a liar. She said she had never seen her before in her life. She said this was clearly a plan, and someone had paid this girl to ruin the wedding. She looked at the guests and asked who could believe such a thing. A few people nodded slowly. A few looked uncertain. Vivienne's mother came to stand beside her daughter. The 2 women looked strong together. They looked practiced. They looked like they had survived difficult situations before and would survive this one. But Harlan was still looking at Ilara, and his face had not changed. Harlan asked Ilara to tell him how she knew him. Ilara said she used to work at a smaller private restaurant where he held business dinners. She said they had spoken a few times. She said he had been kind to her once when she dropped a tray and her manager was angry. She said things had developed slowly. She said she was not proud of everything. She said she had been young and she had trusted someone she should not have fully trusted. But she said the child was real. She said she had the test in the envelope and there were more copies kept safe by a lawyer. Harlan asked her one question. He asked her why today. Why at the wedding? Ilara said she had sent letters to his office 3 times. She pulled folded papers from inside her uniform top. She held them out. Harlan took them. He opened the first one. He read it. He opened the second. He looked at the third. His jaw tightened. He turned around slowly and faced Vivienne again. He held up the letters and asked Vivienne if she had ever seen these. Vivienne said nothing. He asked again. Vivienne said she did not know what those were. Harlan asked his personal assistant, who was sitting in the 3rd row, to come forward. The assistant was a small, quiet man named Theo Kane. He stood up and walked forward quickly. Harlan showed him the letters and asked if he recognized them. Theo looked at them. His face went pale. He swallowed. He said yes. He said those letters had come to the office. He said he had been told by someone to hold them. He said he was told they were from a troublemaker. He said he was told not to show them to Harlan. Harlan asked who had told him that. Theo looked at Vivienne and then looked quickly away. He said it had come from someone close to the house. Vivienne stepped forward now. She was still holding herself together. She said Thea was confused. She said she had nothing to do with any letters. She said she did not even know this girl existed before today. She said her hands were clean. She looked at Harlan and said she loved him. She said she had done nothing wrong. She said they had built something real together, and she was not going to let some waitress destroy it with a piece of paper. Her voice was getting louder. The guests were watching every move. Someone near the back started recording on their phone. A security man moved to stop them. Harlan walked back to where he had been standing at the front of the hall. He reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out the DNA paper again. He read it one more time quietly to himself. Then he folded it again. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he looked down at the floor. Then he looked at Vivienne. He said he had paid for a private DNA test 6 weeks ago. He said it had been taken from a glass that Lila had given him at a function. He said he had done it quietly because he had received one anonymous message that something was not right. The hall became very loud now. People were talking all at once. Vivienne's mother was shouting something. Someone knocked over a chair. The officiant had stepped far back near the curtain. Vivienne looked like the ground had moved under her feet. She was still standing, but her body had shifted. She looked at Harlan and said slowly that he had tested her. He had done all of this without telling her. She said that was a betrayal. She said he had no right. Harlan said very calmly that he had every right, when he had been kept in the dark about a child that carried his blood. Vivienne said the test could be wrong. She said those tests were not always accurate. She said labs made mistakes. Harlan said the accuracy was over 99%, so Vivienne changed direction. She said even if the child existed, it did not mean what everyone was thinking. She said maybe Lila had met someone who looked like Harlan. She said maybe Lila was confused about who the father was. Lila stood very still and said nothing. She had already said what she came to say. She was not going to argue. The paper spoke for her. Harlan looked at Lila and told her he was sorry she had been alone with this. Those words broke something in the room. Harlan apologizing to Lila out loud in front of everyone. Several women in the guest rows began crying. An older man near the window shook his head slowly. Vivienne heard those words and something in her shifted. She stopped performing. She looked at Harlan with raw eyes now. She said quietly that she had only been protecting them. She said if he had known about the child, everything would have fallen apart. She said she found out about Lila 4 months before the wedding. She said she had dealt with it. She thought she had dealt with it. The room went cold with those words. Dealt with it. Harlan repeated the phrase back to her. He asked what she meant by that. Vivienne realized she had said too much. She closed her mouth. Harlan asked again. His voice was no longer calm. It had dropped lower. He asked her what she had done when she found out. Vivienne looked at her mother. Her mother shook her head slightly. Vivienne looked back at Harlan and said she had not done anything harmful. She said she had only made sure the letters did not reach him. She said she had only tried to protect the future they had planned. Harlan said that was not protecting him. He said that was controlling him. He said she had looked him in the eye every day for 4 months and said nothing. He said she had let him plan this wedding. She had let him stand here today and she had known. Vivienne started crying now, real tears this time, not the practiced kind. She said she loved him. She said she was afraid of losing him. She said she did not know what else to do. Harlan looked at her tears. He looked at them for a long moment. Then he looked away. He looked at Lila and asked if the child was here. Lila shook her head. She said Lila was with her sister. She said she had not wanted to bring her to a place like this in case things went badly. Harlan nodded. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small card. He walked to Lila and handed it to her. He said it was his private number, not the office number. His personal one. He said he wanted to meet Lila. He said he wanted to do that the right way. Lila took the card with both hands. She was trying not to cry. She pressed her lips together and nodded once. Harlan turned back to face the hall. He said to the guests that the wedding was not going to happen today. He said he was sorry they had come. He said the food would still be served if they wanted to stay. A few people laughed nervously. Most people were still too shocked to move. Vivienne's mother tried one more time. She stood up and said that Harlan was making a mistake. She said Vivienne was a good woman. She said one mistake did not undo years of love. She said Harlan should think about what he was throwing away. Harlan looked at her and said very quietly that he was not throwing anything away. He was just finally seeing clearly. Vivienne sat down on the nearest chair. Her dress spread around her on the floor. She put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Her mother came and put a hand on her back. The guests began slowly standing and moving. Some came to whisper to Harlan. Some left without speaking. A few women came to look at Ilara with complicated expressions, some with judgment, some with sympathy. Ilara stood near the side door where she had entered. She was not sure if she should leave or stay. She was still holding the card Harlan had given her. She looked at it again to make sure it was real. One of Harlan's cousins pushed through the crowd toward him. His name was Ronan Hale. He was shorter than Harlan, with a round face and loud energy. He grabbed Harlan by the shoulder and said this was madness. He said Harlan had embarrassed the family. He said a man of his position did not do this in public. He said whatever the issue was, it should have been handled privately. Harlan looked at his cousin. He said he agreed that it should have been handled privately, but it had not been because the people around him had made sure he did not have that chance. Ronan went quiet. Harlan walked through the hall slowly. People parted to let him through. He went out through the main doors and stood outside. The evening air was cooler now. The parking lot was full of expensive cars. He stood alone for a moment, just breathing. His security team hovered nearby at a distance. He could hear voices inside, chairs moving, people leaving. He reached up and loosened his tie slightly. He stood there and thought about a 4-year-old girl named Lila who did not know he existed. That thought was the one that cut the deepest. Not Vivienne, not the wedding. Lila. Inside, Vivienne was still sitting in the chair. Most guests had left now. The hall was half empty. A few catering staff were moving quietly between tables, collecting glasses. Ilara had been asked by one of Harlan's staff to wait in a small room off the main hall. She sat there on a plastic chair with her hands in her lap. Her heart was still racing. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had walked into that room full of rich people and handed that man the truth. Her body was exhausted from holding herself together, but she did not regret it. Vivienne stood up from her chair. She walked toward the door Harlan had gone through. Her mother tried to stop her. Vivienne shrugged her hand off. She walked outside. She saw Harlan standing near the fountain at the edge of the parking area. She walked to him. She stopped a few feet behind him. She said his name. He turned around, and she said she was sorry. He looked at her and said he heard her. She asked if sorry was enough. He said he did not know yet. She asked what would happen now. He said he was going to meet his daughter. He said beyond that he could not answer her questions tonight. Vivienne asked if they were finished. Harlan looked at her for a long time. He said he did not know what they were. He said what he did know was that she had made a choice to hide something enormous from him. He said the choice had changed how he saw her. He said he was not angry anymore. He said he was just tired. He said he needed to understand what he was holding in his hands before he could answer anything. Vivienne looked at him with wet eyes. She asked if he still loved her. He said that was the hardest part. He said yes, but love was not always enough. Vivienne walked back inside alone. Harlan stayed outside for a while longer. Then he walked back in through a different door. He went to the small room where Ilara was waiting. He knocked once and opened the door. Ilara stood up immediately. He told her to sit. He sat across from her. He asked her to tell him everything from the beginning. Not the short version. Everything. Ilara looked at him. She took a breath and she began. She talked for a long time. Harlan listened without interrupting. His face moved sometimes. His eyes never left her. He was taking in every word like it was evidence he needed to store carefully. Ilara told him about the first time they had spoken. She said he had looked tired that evening. She said his usual dining companions had been loud and he had sat slightly apart from them. She had refilled his water glass and he had said thank you in a way that felt real, not automatic. She said they had talked a little on other evenings. She said she knew he was powerful. She was not naive, but she had not planned anything. Things had simply happened over a few months. Then she had found out she was pregnant, and she had been terrified. She had not told anyone at first. Harlan asked what she had done when she found out. Ilara said she had tried to reach him. She said she went to his office building and was turned away at the reception. She wrote to his email address she had found online and received no response. She said she left a message with someone on his staff who said they would pass it on. Nothing came back. She said she had not known what to do. She had her daughter. She raised her. She worked the catering jobs wherever she could find them. She said one day she saw his name on the booking list for this venue and knew it was her last chance. Harlan sat quietly when she finished. He asked to see a photo of Lila. Alara reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out her phone. She turned it and showed him. Harlan looked at the screen. His expression shifted just slightly, just for a second, but it was unmistakable. The little girl in the photo had his forehead, his brow, the same shape he saw in his own mirror every morning. He handed the phone back slowly. He said he wanted to meet her as soon as possible. Alara nodded, and he said he would have his lawyer contact her within the week to arrange everything properly. She nodded again. Harlan stood up. He offered his hand. Alara shook it. He said he was sorry for how long it had taken. He said he understood if she was still angry. Alara said she was not angry anymore. She said she had been angry for a long time. She said she had cried many nights, but she said mostly she just wanted Lila to have what she deserved. Harlan said that was fair. He said Lila would have what she deserved. He said that was a promise. He walked out of the room. In the hallway outside, his cousin Ronan was waiting with crossed arms. Harlan walked past him without stopping. Ronan followed him. He said Harlan had made a spectacle. He said the family name was already on social media. He said people were already talking. Harlan stopped walking. He turned around. He looked at Ronan and said slowly that he did not care about the spectacle. He said he had a daughter he had never met. He said that was the only thing that mattered tonight. Ronan opened his mouth. Harlan raised one finger. He said he was going home. He said if Ronan wanted to manage the family name, then Ronan was welcome to give interviews. He turned and walked away again. Ronan stood in the corridor alone. The next morning, Harlan sat in his large, quiet house. The wedding suit was folded on a chair in the corner of his bedroom. He had not hung it up. He had not been ready to deal with it yet. He sat at the small table near the window with a cup of tea. His phone had been ringing all night. Family, business contacts, a journalist whose number he did not recognize. He had not answered any of them. He had only answered one call. It had come at 2 a.m. from Vivienne. He had picked up. She had not spoken immediately. Then she said she was still in her wedding dress. He had told her to take it off and go to sleep. She had laughed in a broken way. He had stayed on the line for a while without speaking. Then he had told her good night and ended the call. It had not been cruel. It had simply been where they were. He drank his tea now and looked out at the garden. The gardener was moving between the flower beds with a bucket. The morning was bright and ordinary. Harlan thought about how strange it was that the world just continued. The birds did not stop singing because a wedding was cancelled. The flowers did not stop opening. His phone buzzed on the table. It was his lawyer, a steady man named Ellis Ward. Harlan picked up. Ellis said he had seen the news. Harlan said yes. Ellis said he was ready whenever Harlan needed him. Harlan said he needed to start paternity confirmation proceedings properly through the legal route. He said he wanted it clean and official. Ellis said he understood. He said he would reach out to Alara's side. Harlan said Alara did not have a lawyer. Ellis asked what Harlan wanted to do about that. Harlan said he wanted Ellis to help her find one, a good one. Ellis was quiet for a moment. Then he said he would handle it. 2 days passed. Harlan had not left the house. He had not answered the journalists. He had not released a statement. He had let the story circulate without feeding it. His PR manager had called 4 times. His mother had called 6 times. His mother's calls he answered on the 4th day. She was a small, steady woman named Mira Reed. She spoke to him plainly. She said she was not going to lecture him. She said she had raised him to face difficult things directly, and she could see he was doing that. She said one thing only. She said if there was a grandchild, she wanted to know her. Harlan said he understood. On the 5th day, Ellis called again. He said the official legal process was moving. He said Alara had agreed. He said a proper second DNA test would be done at a certified medical facility to confirm everything through the right channels. He said this was just for the legal documentation since the original test was already clear. Harlan said fine. He said when would the meeting with Lila happen? Ellis said that depended on Alara. Harlan asked Ellis to ask her. Ellis said he already had, and he said Alara had agreed to a meeting the following Saturday afternoon at a neutral location. Harlan exhaled slowly. He said good. Vivienne called again that evening. This time Harlan did not answer. He sat and watched the phone ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. He watched it again. On the third call, he picked up. Vivienne said she was not going to beg. She said she just needed to know if there was any part of him willing to hear her side properly. Not in the chaos of the wedding hall, just the two of them. Harlan said he was listening. She said she had been terrified of losing him. She said she had made the wrong choice. She said she knew that now. She said hiding those letters had destroyed her inside every day. Harlan said he believed her. She asked if that changed anything, and he said he did not know yet. She said that was fair. She said she would wait. He said she did not have to wait. She said she wanted to. He said that was her choice. He said he was going to focus on the child first. He said everything else had to come after that. Vivienne said she understood. She asked if she could ask one thing. He said yes. She asked if the little girl was okay. He said he had not met her yet. Vivienne said she hoped the girl was healthy. He said, "Thank you." The call ended quietly. Saturday arrived. Harlan wore simple clothes, no suit, dark trousers, and a plain shirt. He drove himself, no security convoy. He did not want to frighten anyone. The location was a small park with a playground. Ellis had suggested it because children felt comfortable there. Harlan arrived 10 minutes early and sat on a bench near the entrance. Families moved around him. Children ran across the grass. He watched them. He was nervous in a way he had not felt in years. He was a man who sat across from government ministers without blinking, but his leg was bouncing slightly on the bench. He pressed his hand on his knee to stop it. Elara arrived at exactly the agreed time. She was holding the hand of a small girl. The girl was wearing a yellow dress and white sandals. Her hair was in two puffs on either side of her head. She was looking at the playground equipment with large, curious eyes. She was not looking at Harlan. She had not noticed him yet. Harlan stood up slowly from the bench. Elara saw him and stopped walking. She bent down to the girl and said something softly. The girl looked in Harlan's direction. She stared at him with the clear, direct stare of a 4-year-old who did not pretend. Harlan walked toward them. He stopped a few feet away. He crouched down so he was at the girl's level. He looked at her face. She looked at his. She had his brow, his cheekbones. She tilted her head sideways and studied him the way a small child studies something they are trying to figure out. Then she said, "Hello. Just hello. Plain and simple." Harlan said hello back. His voice came out slightly rougher than he expected. Lila said his shirt was dark. He said yes, it was. She said her dress was yellow. He said he could see that. She said yellow was the best color. He said he was starting to agree. Elara watched from just behind. She had one hand pressed against her chest. She was watching Harlan's face very carefully. She saw him trying to stay composed. She saw his jaw tighten once and then relax. She saw him ask Lila if she wanted to go on the swings. Lila said yes very loudly and ran toward them. Harlan straightened up and walked after her. Elara followed slowly. For the next hour, Harlan pushed the swings and watched Lila go down the slide 3 times and listened to her explain very seriously why the sandbox was better than the one at her auntie's house. He listened to every word. When Lila grew tired, she sat on the bench between Harlan and Elara and ate a small snack Elara had brought. She leaned slightly against Harlan's arm without seeming to notice she was doing it. Harlan looked down at the top of her head. His face was very still, but his eyes were full of something that had no name. Elara saw it. She looked away to give him the moment privately. Lila finished her snack and held the empty wrapper out to her mother, who took it. Then Lila looked up at Harlan and asked if he was coming back. The question was simple, direct, no fear in it, just wanting to know. Harlan looked at her and said yes. He said he was definitely coming back. Lila nodded like that was the correct answer and then looked back at the playground. Elara looked at Harlan. He looked at her. No long conversation was needed right then. The moment carried its own weight. Later, as they were leaving, Elara strapped Lila into the car seat of her small vehicle. Harlan stood nearby. He said he wanted to make sure they were comfortable. He said financially and in terms of housing. Elara said she was managing. He said he understood, but he said he was her father now. He said he wanted to be responsible. Elara said they could talk through the lawyers. Harlan said fine. Then he said one more thing. He said he wanted to say that she had been brave coming to that wedding, walking into that room. He said he knew how many things could have gone wrong. He said it had taken courage. Elara looked at him for a moment. She said she had been shaking the whole time. He said he could not tell. She said she had practiced in front of her mirror for 2 weeks. He said it had worked. She got into her car, he stepped back, she drove away. He stood in the parking area of the small park and watched until her car disappeared around the corner. He drove home. When he got inside his house, he sat in the living room without turning on the lights. He sat in the quiet. His phone was on the table. He did not look at it. He was thinking about a small girl in a yellow dress who leaned against his arm without knowing who he was yet. He was thinking about how much time had passed. 4 years. He had missed 4 years. That was not going to become grief tonight because grief was not useful right now. But he noted it. He filed it somewhere behind his eyes. He would deal with it properly in time. Right now, he had things to do. The following week, Ronan came to the house. He was calmer than at the wedding. He sat across from Harlan in the front room and said the family was divided. He said some of the elders were angry. He said they felt Harlan had acted impulsively. He said they wanted a family meeting. Harlan said he would attend one meeting. He said he would explain himself once. He said after that the decisions were his. Ronan said the elders were also asking about Vivienne, whether the wedding would be rescheduled. Harlan said nothing had been decided. Ronan asked quietly if Harlan still cared for her. Harlan said that was not the elders' business. The family meeting happened 2 days later at the home of Harlan's uncle, a large, calm man named Theo Reed. There were 12 people in the room, elders, cousins, aunts. His mother, Mira, sat near the end of the table and said nothing for most of it. Harlan sat at one side. He listened to each person speak. Some were harsh, some were careful. One aunt said that men in his position often had children from other places, and it was handled quietly, and that was how it had always been done. Harlan said this was not going to be handled quietly. He said Lila was his daughter and she would know who she was. One of the older uncles said the woman at the wedding had embarrassed the family publicly. He said she had calculated when to strike for maximum damage. Harlan said he understood why it looked that way. He said, but she had tried every other method first and been blocked. He reached into the folder he had brought and placed the copies of the 3 letters on the table. He said these had been sent to his office. He said they had been hidden from him deliberately. The room was quiet. The uncle looked at the letters. He did not speak again after that. Mira looked at her son from the end of the table and nodded once. After the meeting, Harlan stayed behind with his mother. The others had left. Theo brought them tea and then excused himself. Mira sat across from her son with her hands folded. She said he had handled himself well in there. He said he was tired. She said of course he was. She asked how the child was. He said she was wonderful. He said she was small and bright and direct in the way children are before the world teaches them to be careful. Mira smiled. She said that sounded familiar. She said he had been exactly the same way. He looked at his mother and felt something loosen slightly in his chest. 3 weeks after the cancelled wedding, Vivienne called and asked if she could come to the house. Harlan said yes. She arrived in the evening. She looked different. Not the wedding version of herself, the everyday version, no heavy styling, no performance. She sat across from him in the sitting room and said she had been doing a lot of thinking. He said he had too. She said she was going to be honest with him completely now, even if it cost her everything. He said, go ahead. She said she had known about Elara much earlier than 4 months before the wedding. She had known for over a year. The room was very still. Harlan did not respond immediately. He sat down his glass. He said slowly that she had known for a year. She said yes. She said when she first found out she had hired someone to look into it. She said when she confirmed the child existed, she had made a choice to make sure Harlan never found out. She said she had been the one to instruct Theo about the letters. She said she had also had one letter intercepted before it even reached the office. She said she was telling him this now because she could not carry it anymore. She said she was sorry. Harlan stood up and walked to the window. He stood there for a long moment. Then he said 1 year. He said she had carried that for 1 year while sitting across from him at dinner tables, while traveling with him, while planning a wedding. She said yes. He said he needed her to leave now. She said she understood. She stood up. She walked toward the door. She stopped and turned and said she truly loved him. She said she knew that meant nothing right now. She said she just needed him to know it was real, even if everything around it had been wrong. He said he heard her. She left. That night was the lowest point. Harlan sat alone in the house and let himself feel it fully for the first time. He had trusted Vivienne completely. He had been building towards something with her for 2 years. He had believed she was the person he could build a real life with. And she had looked him in the eye every single day for an entire year while knowing something enormous. He did not go to sleep that night. He sat in the dark room until the light came back outside. Then he got up, he washed his face, he made tea, he called Alice, he said he needed to talk about next steps. 2 days later, a story appeared in a popular online publication. Someone had given a detailed account of the wedding to a journalist. The account included quotes from guests. It included details about the letters. It included speculation about the child. Harlan read it once and then put his phone face down. He already knew who had spoken to the journalist. Vivienne's mother. He could recognize the framing, and the story was written in a way that made Lila look calculating and made Vivienne look like a heartbroken woman who had made one understandable mistake. Harlan was described as cold and public and cruel for ending things in front of everyone. His PR manager called immediately. She said they needed to respond. Harlan said they would not respond to this one. She said the silence would be interpreted badly. He said he understood. She said the narrative was moving against him. He said, let it move. She was frustrated. She said people were already choosing sides online. He said people would always choose sides, and it was not his job to manage that. She said at least let her release one line. He said no. He said the only story being told right now was Lila's story, and that one was going to be told privately and with care. She went quiet. Then she said she understood. Lila saw the article. She called Alice's office. She asked what she should do. Alice relayed the question to Harlan. Harlan said Lila should say nothing. He said anyone who came to her should be directed to Alice. He said he would make sure she had support. Lila said she was getting messages on her phone. Some were supportive, some were very cruel. Someone had found her social media account and was leaving comments calling her names. She had locked the account, but it was too late for some of it. Harlan told Alice to tell her he was sorry that was happening. He said it would pass. He said he was in her corner. The official second DNA test came back on a Thursday. Alice called Harlan in the morning. Harlan was having breakfast. Alice said the result confirmed what the first test had shown. Harlan said he already knew. He said it had never been a question for him from the moment he saw Lila at the park. He said what was the next step legally. Alice said they could proceed with formal acknowledgement of paternity. He said there was paperwork. He said there was also the question of custody arrangement and financial support, and how Lila would be recorded officially. Harlan said to proceed with everything. He said he wanted Lila's life to be stable and complete. He met with Lila again the following week. This time they met at Alice's office. It was a professional setting, and that felt right. Both of them sat across from Alice with their own advisors present. It was not cold, but it was careful. They discussed what shared parenting would look like. They discussed what Lila would be told and when and how. They agreed that Lila's well-being came first before any other consideration. They agreed that the two of them would speak directly if anything urgent arose rather than only through lawyers. Lila said she did not want Lila to feel like a legal document. Harlan said he completely agreed. Outside of Alice's office afterward, they stood on the pavement for a moment. Lila said this was strange. He asked what was strange. She said all of it. She said a few weeks ago she was delivering plates at a wedding and hoping she would not faint from fear. He said she had not looked afraid. She said she had been absolutely terrified. He said he was glad she came anyway. She said so was she. The car drove past. A pigeon landed near them and then flew off. She said she had to get back to Lila. He said of course. She said bye. He said bye. When she walked toward the car park, he watched her go and then walked the other way. Ronan called that evening. He said the story was getting bigger. He said a television station had picked it up. He said the older business contacts were asking questions. He said some people were whispering that Harlan was losing his grip. Harlan told Ronan to tell those people to focus on their own companies. Ronan said this was serious. Harlan said he was aware of what was serious and what was noise. He said Ronan needed to trust that he had not survived 15 years of building a business empire by making poor judgments under pressure. He said he was not going to start now. Ronan said yes. He said okay. He hung up. The television story aired on a Friday evening. Harlan did not watch it. His housekeeper told him it was on. He said thank you and continued reading. He could hear the television from the next room, but he did not go in. Later he found out they had interviewed Vivienne. She had appeared composed and soft. She had not attacked anyone. She had spoken carefully about love and mistakes and the pressure of being in a relationship with a very public man. She had not mentioned Lila by name. She had not said anything technically untrue. She had just arranged the truth in a way that made her look like the one who had been wounded. Harlan found out because Mira called him the next morning and said she had watched it. He asked what she thought. She said Vivienne was a very intelligent woman. He said yes. Mira said that was not necessarily a compliment in this context. He said he knew. She said the television appearance would complicate things. He said let it. She said she was not telling him what to do. She was just noting it. He said he appreciated the note. She asked how Lila was. He said he was seeing her again on Sunday. Mira asked if she could come sometime. He said he would ask Ilara. He said it would need to be done carefully. Mira said, of course. Sunday came. Harlan brought a small gift, a drawing kit with colored pencils because Ilara had mentioned Lila liked to draw. When Lila saw it, she made a sound like a bird discovering something shiny. She grabbed it and ran into the other room. Ilara called after her to say thank you. Lila ran back and said thank you very loudly and then ran away again. Harlan stood in the doorway of the small sitting room, smiling in a way he had not smiled in weeks. Ilara offered him tea. He sat at the small kitchen table while she made it. The flat was modest and clean. It smelled like cooking and something like lavender. They talked while the tea brewed. Ilara asked how things were going for him. He said complicated. She said she was sorry her arrival into his life had made things harder. He said he did not see it that way. He said she had given him something true. She asked what he meant. He said Lila was the most real thing he had come across in a long time, that everything else around her felt constructed and managed, but she was just real. Ilara looked at her tea. She said she understood that. He asked how Ilara was doing. She said she was adjusting. He asked if she was still getting bad messages. She said fewer now. Lila came back into the kitchen with a drawing. She had drawn 3 figures. She explained that the tall one was him. He asked how she knew which was him. She said because she gave him long arms. He asked about the other 2. She said one was her and one was her mama. He asked why he had the longest arms. She said very seriously because he was the tallest. He looked at the drawing. He said he would like to keep it if that was okay. She thought about it. Then she said yes. But he had to put it on his wall, not just leave it on a table. He said he would put it on his wall. He drove home that evening and put the drawing on the wall of his study. He stepped back and looked at it. A small child's drawing in colored pencil with 3 stick figures and very long arms on one of them. He looked at it for a while. Then he sat at his desk. He picked up his phone. He looked at Vivienne's name. He put the phone down. He looked at the drawing again. He thought about the year she had known, the year of dinners and travel and planning and conversations, and she had carried that knowledge and said nothing. He thought about what kind of love that was and whether it was love at all or something else. He called her. She answered on the first ring. He said he needed to ask her something. She said, okay. He said he wanted to know what she had been afraid of, not the simple answer, the real one. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said she had been afraid that if he knew about the child, he would feel responsible to be in that woman's life. She said she was afraid he was capable of choosing differently. She said she was afraid that his decency would take him away from her. He said so, she hid it because she did not trust him to choose her. She said quietly, yes, that was exactly it. He sat with that for a moment. He said that was the most painful part. Not the hiding, the reason for it. He said she had never trusted him. Not really. She said she trusted him too much. She said she trusted him to do the right thing, which was the thing she could not allow. He said those were not the same thing. She said she knew. He said he needed more time to think. She said she would be here. He said good night. She said good night. He put the phone down and looked at the drawing on the wall again, the little figure with the longest arms. He got up and went to make tea. The house was quiet around him. 2 weeks later, something new happened. A man came to Ellis's office. He was not a lawyer. He was not a journalist. He said his name was Garrett Flynn, and he said he had information relevant to Harlan Reed. Ellis called Harlan. Harlan came to the office. Garrett was a compact, serious man in his late 40s. He said he used to work for a private investigation firm. He said he had been hired about 14 months ago by someone to look into Ilara Voss. He said the person who hired him had wanted to know everything about her. Her address, her routines, who she spoke to, whether she had documentation connecting her to Harlan. Harlan asked who had hired him. Garrett said he had been instructed to say it was a private client and keep the identity confidential. He had done so for over a year, but he said he had read the news. He said he had watched how the story was being told. He said something about how it was being framed was bothering him. He said he had a daughter of his own who was 7 years old. He said he was not going to let a small child be used as a piece in someone's game without at least coming forward. He said his records showed who had hired him. He said he was willing to share them if Harlan wanted them. Harlan looked at Ellis. Ellis looked at Garrett. Garrett placed a folder on the desk. The name on the billing records inside was not Vivienne. It was Vivienne's mother. Harlan opened the folder slowly. He read through the pages carefully. The investigation had been extensive. Elara's address at multiple points, records of when she left the flat, photographs of her outside her building with Lila in a pram, documentation of the letter she had sent, notes on which staff member at Harlan's office had received them. Everything had been mapped out and then handed to someone who used it to make sure nothing reached Harlan. Harlan sat back in his chair. He asked Ellis to secure the documents properly. Ellis nodded and called his assistant. Garrett said he understood if there were legal questions about his coming forward this late. He said he was prepared for whatever consequences followed. He said he just could not sit on it anymore. Harlan looked at the man and said he respected that. He said he understood the position it put him in. He said Ellis would be in contact with him shortly. Garrett stood up. He shook Harlan's hand and left. Harlan and Ellis sat alone in the office for a while. The folder sat on the desk between them. Neither of them spoke immediately. Then Ellis said quietly that Vivienne's mother had done this. Harlan said yes. Ellis said, did Harlan think Vivienne knew the full extent? Harlan said he did not know. He said that was the question he was sitting with. Ellis said that made a significant difference to how things looked. Harlan said yes, it did. He said, but it also did not change the fact that Vivienne had known about Elara and the child for a year and had said nothing regardless of what her mother had or had not arranged. Ellis said that was true. Harlan said he needed to sit with this for a few days before he decided what to do with it. He did not call Vivienne that evening. He sat alone at home with the folder in front of him. He was not going to react quickly. He had spent his whole professional life resisting the pull of quick reactions. He was going to think this through. Vivienne's mother had hired someone to surveil Elara. She had gathered information. She had used it. The question was whether her daughter had orchestrated that or simply benefited from it while choosing not to look too closely at what her mother was doing. Both possibilities were troubling, but they were troubling in different ways. He needed to know which one was true before he made any move. He called Vivienne 3 days later. He said he needed to see her. She came immediately. She sat across from him. He placed the folder on the table between them, but did not open it yet. He said he needed her to answer one question with complete honesty. He said if she lied, he would know it, and that would be the last conversation they ever had. She said, "Okay." He asked if she had known that her mother had hired a private investigator to gather information on Elara. Vivienne looked at the folder. Her eyes moved across the cover. She looked back at Harlan. She said no. She said she did not know that. Harlan watched her face. He watched the small movements, the steadiness of her eyes, the fact that she had not asked what was in the folder before she answered. She had just answered. He said so she was telling him that her mother had acted without her knowledge on the investigation side. She said she had found out about Elara another way. She said a mutual contact had mentioned having seen Harlan with a woman who had a baby. She said she had then confirmed it herself by looking into it on her own without telling her mother. She said her mother had found out later and had taken it upon herself to go further. Harlan asked if that bothered her. She said, "Of course it did." He asked why she had not told him what her mother had done when she found out. She said by that point she had already made her choice to hide the situation. She said she was already in too deep. She said she had been afraid of her own mother's involvement coming out and making everything worse. He said so she had buried it. She said yes. He said she had made the wrong choices and her mother had made even worse ones. And both of those things had been directed at a woman and a child who had done nothing to deserve any of it. Vivienne said yes. She said she wanted to reach out to Elara. She said she wanted to apologize. Harlan said that was not his place to arrange or allow. He said if she wanted to do that, she would need to go through the proper channels. She said she understood. He asked one more question. He said going forward, what would she do about her mother's role in this? Vivienne said her mother had crossed a line she could not excuse. She said she had already told her mother that. She said things between them were very difficult right now. Harlan said he heard her. He closed the folder. He said he needed more time. She said she knew. She left. He called Ilara that evening. He said there were developments and he wanted to make sure she was informed before anything became public. He told her about Garrett, about the investigation, about the photographs of her and Lila. He heard her breathing change on the line. He said he was sorry. She said quietly that someone had been watching her and her daughter without her knowing. He said yes. She said for how long? He said based on the records at least 10 months. She was silent for a while. Then she said she needed to sit down. He said, take your time. She said this made her sick. He said he understood. She asked what would happen now. He said Ellis was reviewing what legal options existed. He said he wanted to make sure she was protected going forward. She said she was not asking for herself. She said she was asking because Lila had been in those photographs. He said he knew. He said that was the part that angered him most. She said she did not want Lila's image or existence used in any courtroom or publication. He said he would make sure of that. She said thank you. He said he meant it when he said he was in her corner. She said she was starting to believe that. He said good. He said get some rest. She said she would try. Ellis moved quickly on the legal side. Within a week, he had prepared documentation to have the matter of the surveillance addressed formally. Vivienne's mother received a formal legal letter. Harlan did not enjoy this part. He was not a man who liked conflict for its own sake, but he was also not a man who allowed people to surveil his daughter without consequence. Vivienne's mother called him directly. He did not answer. She called again. He did not answer. She called Ellis's office and was told everything was now in legal hands. The matter would be dealt with through proper channels. His door was not open to informal negotiation on this one. Ronan heard about the legal action and called Harlan alarmed. He said this was escalating. Harlan said it was being resolved. There was a difference. Ronan said it would make more news. Harlan said probably. He said the alternative was to let someone get away with surveilling a woman and her infant child because they were inconvenient. He said he was not built that way. Ronan said he understood, but the timing. Harlan said, Ronan, the timing is always wrong for doing the right thing. That is the nature of it. Ronan was quiet. He said, all right. He said, call me if you need anything. Harlan said he would. They hung up. A week later, something shifted. A different publication ran a story. This one had more of the true shape to it. It covered the letters. It covered the surveillance. It did not use Ilara's name or Lila's. It referred to them with neutral language. It asked the question of what it meant when the people around powerful men worked to keep certain truths from reaching them. The piece was fair and careful. Harlan did not know who had written it, but whoever they were, they had done careful work. The comments on the piece were different from the earlier one. People were asking different questions now. The narrative had shifted. Harlan's PR manager called. She said, see? She said, this is why patience works sometimes. He said he had not done anything to plant the story. She said she knew. She said the truth had found its own footing. He said that happens sometimes. She said she still wanted to release one brief official statement confirming basic facts without detail. He thought about it. He said one paragraph. No embellishment, just fact. She said, perfect. She drafted it. He read it twice and approved it. It was released on a Tuesday afternoon. It simply confirmed that there was a child, that the child was his, that he was committed to being present in her life, that further matters were private. The response was mostly respectful. Some people were moved. Some still took Vivienne's side. Some were angry about the surveillance. Some were focused on Lila's story and what kind of life she would have now. Harlan read a few responses and then stopped. He did not need to absorb all of it. He knew what mattered. He had a daughter. He was in her life now. Everything else was around the edges. He went to visit Lila that Thursday. She had drawn him another picture. This one had more color. She had added a yellow sun in the corner and a tree. He asked what the tree was. She said it was their tree. He asked where it was. She said in the park where they first met. He put that drawing next to the first one on the wall of his study. He stood and looked at both of them for a long time. His housekeeper knocked and said dinner was ready. He said he would be there in a moment. He stood a little longer. Then he turned off the light in the study and walked to the dining room. He ate alone that evening, but he did not feel alone the way he had before. The house was the same. The quiet was the same, but something inside it had changed. He could not name it exactly. It was just different, heavier and lighter at the same time, like something had arrived that was supposed to have arrived a long time ago. Vivienne's mother did not contest the legal action in the end. She had clearly received counsel that it was not a battle worth fighting. The matter was settled formally without going to a public hearing. Harlan did not celebrate this. He filed it away. What mattered was that there was a record. What mattered was that the choice to surveil Elara and Lila had a consequence attached to it. He called Elara and told her it was settled. She said thank you. He said no need. She said there was every need. She said she had been through a very long road with very little support. She said having someone in her corner was not something she took lightly. He asked if she had everything she needed. She said mostly. He asked what mostly meant. She said she was looking for a different flat. The current one was fine, but she wanted more space for Lila. He asked what kind of space. She said somewhere with a small garden if possible, somewhere Lila could run around. He said he would help. She said she did not want charity. He said he understood that. He said it was not charity. He said he had missed 4 years of supporting his child. He said he owed a financial contribution regardless of their situation. He said finding a better home for her was part of that. Elara said she would think about it. She called back 2 days later. She said okay. She said she would let him help with the housing. She said she had one condition. She said it had to be in her name. She said she was not going to be in a situation where she was living somewhere that could be taken away from her. He said, of course. He said that was the right position to take. She said she appreciated that he said that without pushing back. He said he genuinely meant it. She said she was learning that about him. He asked what she was learning. She said that his words seemed to mean something. He said he tried to make sure of that. She said that was good. She said Lila asked about him this morning. He asked what she asked. She said she asked if the man with the long arms was coming back soon. Harlan laughed. It came out of him easily and fully. A real laugh, the kind he had not had in weeks. He said, tell her yes. Elara said she would. He said he would come Sunday. She said Sunday was good. He said he would bring lunch if she told him what Lila liked. She listed things. He wrote them down. He showed up Sunday with everything on the list. Lila checked the bags with great seriousness and confirmed that he had gotten it right. She then took him by the hand and showed him a crack in the wall near her window and explained that she thought a tiny animal lived in it. He crouched down and examined the crack very seriously and said he agreed that was possible. Elara watched from the kitchen doorway. She was stirring something on the stove. She watched Harlan crouch next to her daughter and examine an imaginary animal's home in a wall crack. She thought about the night she had practiced in front of her mirror. She thought about how her hands had shaken in the pocket of her catering uniform. She thought about the moment she had walked through those doors into the wedding hall full of expensive people and soft music and white flowers. She thought about how she had not let herself feel how afraid she was until it was over. She turned back to the stove. The food was ready. She called them both. She called. Now, if you have been watching this far, please drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Are you in New York, South Africa, Canada, Jamaica, London, Nigeria, Ghana, anywhere in the world? We want to hear from you, and please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves a powerful story. It helps more people find us, and we appreciate every single one of you. Now let us continue. A month passed, then another. The rhythm of things settled. Harlan saw Lila every week, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes he picked her up and took her somewhere simple. A park, a small children's museum he had discovered. Once she asked to go to a place where they made bread, and he found a bakery that offered short guided tours for children, and they spent an hour watching dough being shaped, and Lila came home with flour on her nose. He had a photograph on his phone now. He looked at it more than he would admit. His work had continued through all of it. The business did not pause for personal chaos. He had been in meetings through the entire period. He had closed 2 deals in the month after the wedding. His team had noticed he was quieter, but no less sharp. One of his senior managers said to another privately that whatever had happened, it had not slowed him down. The other said it seemed like it had focused him. They were both partially right. He was focused, but it was a different kind of focus than before. Before he had been focused on building and accumulating. Now there was something concrete he was building toward that was not abstract. Vivienne contacted him again in the 2nd month. She said she had done something. She said she wanted him to know before he heard it another way. She said she had reached out to Ilara through a formal letter sent through Ellis. She said she had written to apologize. She said she had not asked for a response. She had not asked for anything. She had just written the truth about what she had done and what she knew her mother had done and said she was sorry. Harlan asked if Ilara had responded. Vivienne said she did not know yet. She said she had sent it 2 days ago. He said okay. He said thank you for telling him. Ilara told Harlan a week later that she had received a letter from Vivienne. He said he had heard it was coming. He asked what she had done with it. Ilara said she had read it 3 times. He asked what she was going to do. She said she had not decided yet. He said she did not owe anyone a response. She said she knew that. She said the letter was actually more honest than she expected. He said Vivienne could be honest when she chose to be. Ilara said that was an interesting way to put it. He said it was just accurate. She said she might write back one day. He said that was entirely her choice. She said yes, it was. By the 3rd month, things had found a new shape. Not resolved, not simple, but shaped. Harlan and Ilara had a clear and respectful arrangement. Lila was the center of it, and everything organized around her. Mira had met Lila on a Saturday afternoon at a small tea room. She had sat across from the little girl and looked at her face for a long moment, and then looked at her son. He had looked back at her. She had returned her attention to Lila and asked what colors she liked. Lila had said yellow and orange and sometimes green. Mira had said those were excellent choices. Lila had agreed that they were. Harlan and Vivienne still spoke. Not every day, but they spoke. The shape of what they were had not yet been defined. He was not ready to end it, and he was not ready to rebuild it. It was somewhere in between, and he was being honest about that. She was still in her own flat. She was not waiting loudly. She was just existing nearby. He respected that even when it made things more complicated. He had told her once that he needed to trust her completely before he could consider anything else. She had said she understood. She had said she was going to earn it back if he gave her the time. On a Tuesday evening, 4 months after the wedding, Harlan sat at his desk. The 2 drawings from Lila were on the wall behind him. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Lila's number, which was actually Ilara's phone, but Lila had apparently learned to send voice messages. He played it. A small clear voice said, "Hello, man with long arms. I made you something." She said something in the background to her mother, and Ilara said, "Tell him what it is." Lila said it was a secret, and he had to come see it. He listened to the message twice. He put his phone face down on the desk. He looked at the ceiling. He exhaled slowly. Then he picked his phone back up and typed a message to Ilara. He asked if Saturday was still good. She replied quickly and said yes. He put the phone down. He looked at the 2 drawings on the wall. He thought about the park. He thought about the crack in the wall where the imaginary animal lived. He thought about flour on a little nose. He thought about a wedding he had stood at in a dark suit with polished shoes waiting for something that had turned out to be the wrong shape. He thought about a young woman in a catering uniform walking through tall doors holding an envelope in both hands. He thought about how close he had come to never knowing. If Ilara had not come that day, if she had been blocked one more time, if she had given up, he would have married Vivienne. He would have lived inside a version of his life that was missing something he did not even know existed. A little girl in a yellow dress who thought long arms were funny and who examined wall cracks with complete seriousness and who put flour on her own nose and who called him man with long arms in a voice message on a Tuesday night. He would have missed all of it. The thought was very heavy. He did not let the heaviness stay too long. He was not the kind of man who drowned in what could have been. He noted it. He filed it. He let it remind him to be careful going forward about what he allowed to be built around him. He had surrounded himself with people who served him well professionally, but he had not paid enough attention to who they were willing to protect. Theo had hidden the letters, his own assistant, because someone had told him to. Harlan had spoken to Theo. He had not fired him. He had made clear what the expectations were going forward, and he was watching. Theo had been visibly remorseful, but remorse had to be followed by changed behavior. Time would show. He called his mother before he went to sleep that Tuesday night. She picked up and said it was late. He said he knew. She asked if everything was all right. He said yes. He said he just wanted to hear her voice. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Of course." She said, "Tell me something." He said, "Lila sent me a voice message tonight." She said, "What did she say?" He told her. Mira laughed a real full laugh. He said he had listened to it twice. Mira said she bet he had. He said goodnight. She said goodnight. "Sleep well," she said. He said he would try. He put the phone down. He closed his eyes. Saturday came and Lila showed him what she had made. It was a small figure assembled from clay, misshapen and wonderful. She said it was him. He looked at it from all angles. He asked how she knew it was him. She pointed to the arms. She had made the arms longer than the body. He said, "Of course." He said it was perfect. She said it could live on his desk. He said it absolutely would. Ilara watched from the doorway with a small, careful smile. Harlan put the clay figure carefully in his jacket pocket. He could feel it there for the rest of the afternoon, small and solid and real. On the drive home, he thought about what came next. Not the distant future, the near one. Next week, next month. He thought about Lila starting school the following year and what that would look like with her having a father who was now present. He thought about how to make that transition normal for her, not grand, not performative, just there. He thought about Ilara and the careful trust they were building. He thought about Vivienne and the open question that still sat between them. He did not have answers to all of it, but the questions were the right ones now. That was different from before. He parked outside his house. He sat in the car for a moment. He reached into his jacket pocket and felt the clay figure. He pulled it out and held it in his palm. It was short body, long arms, made by a small child on a Saturday in a flat that smelled like cooking and lavender. He looked at it for a moment. Then he got out of the car. He walked into his house. He put the figure on his desk next to a lamp where he would see it every morning. He stepped back and looked at it there. Then he went to the kitchen to make tea. The house felt different in a way that was no longer surprising. It just felt like where he lived now. And that is where we leave the story. Not with everything resolved, not with everyone transformed, but with truth having made its way through. With a man who stood at an altar and made a choice to face what was real, even when it cost him everything he had planned. With a woman who walked through doors that terrified her because a child deserved to be seen. And with a little girl named Lila, who drew long arms and made clay figures and asked simple questions, and did not know yet how much her arrival had changed the world around her. Truth does not always arrive at a convenient time, but when it arrives, it changes the shape of everything. Sometimes the person who hands you the most important thing you will ever receive is someone you almost did not see. Standing quietly at the edge of your beautiful planned life, holding something true in both shaking hands. The question is never whether the truth arrives, it always arrives. The question is whether we are brave enough to open the envelope and whether the people around us are brave enough to let us. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. Hey, if this moved you, please like this video and subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, and we really want to know where you are watching from. Drop a comment right now. Are you in New York, South Africa, Canada, Jamaica, London, Nigeria, Ghana, Australia, India, anywhere in the world? Tell us where you are. Your comment means more than you know. We read them. We see you and we will see you in the next